Welcome back to the channel. In today's video, we're going to be focusing a little bit on the Scar, which received a buff at the start of Season 4, and whether or not it actually made some dramatic changes, and if it needs any more changes to make this thing a little bit more usable. If you enjoy the video, learn something new, please do me a favor, hit the like button. If you're brand new, want to find your way back, just double check, make sure you are subscribed with notifications on. Let's go ahead and take a look at what changed as part of the Season 4 update. So with the Season 4 update, it says right here, Assault Rifle Golf, it says neck damage multiplier increase from 1 to 1.5. In case there's some confusion with this, it seems like there is a lot of confusion with it. Basically, you have a head hitbox, a neck hitbox, upper torso hitbox, lower torso they call it, which is the stomach. And then you have the limbs hitbox, and then it's different sniper rifles. Sometimes, depending on the COD, they've had different limb multipliers for hand or forearm or bicep or whatever. So there are different multipliers. As it was before, the only way you would get headshot damage is you had to physically hit the head, which usually meant you aim for the top of the head, you get the headshot damage. If you aimed a little bit too low and you were hitting neck damage and you're wondering, what the heck, why isn't it doing the damage it needs to? You're actually damaging the neck, which has a 1x multiplier for most weapons as a base multiplier. Some weapons, it's a little bit higher, which with the Kar 98, I think that's the reason why it feels like it, like, man, how is that not a headshot? Or how is it a headshot? It's kind of one of those things where it's enough to break armor, but not enough to down the player. So there's a lot of instances where this will happen within the game, but this is very hard to test. This little miniature hitbox in a practical setting. So they've gone and improved that, which basically means that now if you're aiming at the upper chest, you might get lucky enough to get couple of headshots where maybe you wouldn't have gotten them. And we're going to call it headshots for the sake of argument, because in reality, even though you're hitting the neck, you're getting headshot damage. So that is a huge change, because then it kind of expands the hitbox from here up to here where you're going to get headshot damage. So it just makes it a little bit more forgiving in certain gunfights where maybe you get flinched up. It's going to benefit people that do get flinched, or maybe you fire second or something like that. Then we also have the upper torso damage multiplier increase from 1 to 1.2. And the Scar's kind of been an anomaly because it is not a 5.56 weapon, but the damage profile is very similar to that, where you do the same damage to the limbs, the stomach, and the upper torso, whereas you should have different numbers like the Odin or the AK-47 from Modern Warfare. So two big changes there, and we would like to avoid increasing power level weapon to a point where we would need to reduce it shortly after, so they didn't want to overdo it and then underdo it. May see another power increase in the near future, but we think an improvements to its average time to kill is a good place to start. Now let's literally look at the data and see what this change actually does. So right here we have the Scar pre-buff, which is right here on the top section, and then we have the buffed version of the Scar over here on the bottom section. So pretty much what they did is if we had a neck damage multiplier, it would have went up from its normal value up to 56. So instead of 35, it would have been 56. Instead of 32, it would have been 51. Before, it was always 8 shots to kill, regardless, unless you got headshots in the mix. So that was kind of an interesting feature within Warzone when it comes to 250 damage needed to down a player. So you can see it was always 8, and it actually reduced the close range TTK significantly, lowering it by 2 shots if you manage to focus on chest shots. And then you can see it gets all the way down to 524, which is actually pretty impressive. That requires 100% chest shots though. So it's a little bit less practical, but imagine you get maybe 2 or 3 chest shots, maybe a headshot. So you go start at the stomach, you get some stomach damage, land a couple chests, and then you get 1 headshot in the mix. Then you're getting really close to that TTK. So this thing can definitely melt. And you can see now that it's 1 headshot before. Now you need only 1 chest shot to get 7 shots to kill. 6 for the chest instead of 2 headshots. So dramatic change there. And then 3 headshots, which is a little bit less practical. You'll probably never happen out of 5 shots, instead of 5, where it was basically impossible. Then we also have the increase over here to the damage, to the second damage, up to 38. Which makes it so you need 5 chest shots for 7 shots to kill instead of 2 headshots. Dramatically different. This is going to be way more common, way more practical, and very competitive. And then we also have the 2 headshots instead of 4. So this will happen on occasion where you still get that insane TTK at range, but a little bit less practical because you need 2 headshots out of 6 shots. And then we have 5 headshots, which did not change because you just need that number of shots to kill. One thing I did want to highlight on this right section, which becomes very important when we talk about meta and all these different types of builds, is the damage per mag. This is very important when it comes to Warzone because this allows you to be competitive within the meta for multiple modes. For something like this where you only can do about 1,000, you could probably use this in solos and do very well for yourself. It fits within the meta. But as soon as you go to duos, a little bit less practical, trios, even less practical, quads, dang near impossible. Unless you just have the right circumstances and you don't really get into a 4v1 scenarios. So you can see right there, it did bump it up just a little bit by about 200 damage, but that's not going to be big time noticeable, especially once we're comparing that to the long range meta. So let's go ahead and look at the spreadsheet, which has all of those data points. So this is the normal spreadsheet that we use with all the different loadout stuff. We're going to go ahead and go down TTK compared. We can see that we went in and changed that. I changed those values over here for the SCAR behind my camera. You can see just above my camera here, I went and changed those values so that's accurate. And then I added the SCAR to the long range TTK chart, as you can see right here. We'll zoom in a little bit so we get a little bit better of a picture. And what we're going to look at here is the different categories. We have the weapon, rate of fire, mag size, long range damage, down players, practical shots to kill, long range TTK, and if they have an open bolt delay or not. These TTKs are without that open bolt delay, so you're typically going to add that 40 to 60 milliseconds depending on that weapon if it is a yes. So if we look at the SCAR here, you can see as it comes across, the max bullet velocity, 1250, it's very competitive within the meta, considering that almost all of the Cold War guns are right around 1100. So it perfectly fits in line with something like the FARA. A little bit faster. You can actually take a downgrade in bullet velocity if you want to get a little bit better aim down sight by swapping the barrel, which we're going to talk about when it comes to loadouts. Now we have the mag size of 30. That is the max mag size. Ideally, that would be something like 45, like the AMAX. So it'd be able to compete a little bit more within that realm, especially considering so many of the Cold War weapons actually have very large magazines, 55, 60, and are doing similar damages at similar, like farther ranges. So it just doesn't make sense. It doesn't add up. But what I wanted to focus on here is if we highlight here, you can see it's lit up. Let's take a look at the TTK. They are separated by long range TTK. The SCAR actually kills comparable with the Milano, because it does have a slow fire rate, almost identical to the Milano since it's the same number of shots to kill, basically an identical long range TTK. When it comes to the Bruin being a little bit slower, RPD, even the C58 is a little bit slower. The XM4, a little bit slower. AMAX, slower. FARA, which is definitely meta, slower. And this all comes down to this damage per mag category. Once I sorted by that, you'll be able to see a little bit clearer of a picture of why it is so held back by one specific stat, which is the damage per mag. So let's go ahead and boost that there. So now you can see the different categories here. And we go to the SCAR. The SCAR is all the way over here, very low on this list, and it has a similar issue as the M13 where it just does not do enough damage per mag. You can see this right here. It has half the bullets. It does the same amount of damage as the M13, and that's part of the problem with the M13 is the damage per mag. It's great in solos. TTK is okay. 800 is nothing special, but the fact that you can down a player is very consistent, easy to use for the M13 makes it a little bit more usable in solos and duos. When it comes to the SCAR, you're very limited here. The fact that you could go with a dozen other weapons that have one, lower recoil, bigger mag, and similar TTKs, why would you ever choose the SCAR? If they bump this mag up to 45, theoretically, let's go ahead and bump that up just so you can see it for argument's sake, it'd be 1700, which would put it over here in line with the S87, the Bruin, the XM4, the Krig, the AN94, the AMAX. Right? So it could definitely compete if it had a 45 round mag. So that's what I would recommend them change on this weapon. Until then, I would say that if you want to use it, because it is definitely usable now, it's very competitive. The TTK is solid. You can use it in solos, get away with it a little bit in duos, but beyond that, it's going to be a little bit tricky. Now let's go ahead and talk about the SCAR class setup. So pretty straightforward build here. Theoretically, if you're playing on a smaller map and you want to use this for the short range TTK, which is pretty solid, which we saw, you could build it kind of like a sniper support, but you're going to get in some tricky situations if you are playing anything more than solos. Just kind of how it works. You would probably put on the lightweight suppressor, even though this is going to technically hurt your bullet velocity a little bit. You can make up for that by maybe putting on the 17-inch barrel instead of the 20, so that you get a little bit faster aim down sight there. You can put on the tack laser. You got to put on the 30-round mag, and then you would probably put on the commando foregrip, and that's kind of how you would build it if it was going to be like a sniper support build, because the iron sights on the Scar are amazing. Then if you're going to actually use it in the practical sense, which would be a long range option, you would probably go the monolithic. Depending on your perception of the recoil and bullet velocity, you might go with the 20. Keeping in mind, this is like 30 milliseconds slower. 2 additional frames could be pretty dramatic. Depending on how you want to use the weapon, you drop the tack laser, and then you would put on like a holographic sight or the 3X, which will also help with the recoil. And then once you do this, the aim down sight's still relatively slow. It kind of feels a little bit more like an LMG, but you are getting the bullet velocity that you need, and you're going to be able to take advantage of the extra damage range, so that if anyone is within the range, you will be able to melt them, because the TTK is much nicer. It's just the problem when it comes down to it, 30-round mag is kind of atrocious. Need to be at least a 45. Perfect world 50 would be amazing. And just kind of rearrange these so that the base is 25. This first mag would probably be like 40, and then the next mag would be 50. And just keep the same stat properties where these slow you down slightly, and then you'll have an amazing gun that is off meta. Not a lot of people use, but if people wanted to, they could use it and not be at a huge disadvantage. Hopefully you guys did enjoy the video, learned something new. If you did, please do me a favor, hit the like button. If you're brand new, want to find your way back, double check, make sure you are subscribed with notifications on. Appreciate all the support on the channel. Thank you for watching. As always, have a great day.